anyway. So thank you for filling us in. And just again, I think everybody's prayers are with you and all that.
Yeah,
And
I appreciate all the support too. That
yeah,
really helps.
well, it's out there, even if you didn't get the message. So,
Oh, we did.
yeah. All right, let me see where I'm trying to find my well, here it is. Here it is. I'm trying to find my screen here. Here we go. I'm back on. All right, we got pretty good quorum here. So I think I'll go ahead and get on. Let me see who is on. Let's see what's in the chat. Breaking away. Sandy's got to break away. Okay, so I'll get in there and put her on early. I need to be and Mark. Okay, for deposition, not defendant. Good one. I like it. Have to leave at 12:30. We'll get Ken on because Ken's going to have to give a presentation today for us. So I'll get him on. HE, anything we need to do in GoFundMe. Joelle is asking if there's anything we can do in addition to the GoFundMe. So just anything else to add there, AJ?
No, not really.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thoughts and prayers are good.
Okay, good. So, alrighty. So let's, I think let me see who all is on now. Let me see here. I'm going through my list. Okay, Slovis has to be off in about an hour, right? So we'll try to get to you. Peter Taylak's on. Hey, that's exciting, Peter. It's great to see you. We'll get John Mick Malloy from Dublin's on. Let's see. We got Scott Nichols. Love to check in with Scott if he doesn't mind talking to us. And let's see who else is here. This is good. Good people here. So, all right. And there's Schneider, who has to get off in a little while. Fiona is with us. Good news. Okay. We have a lot of questions for her, I think, today. So, all righty. Well, let's go ahead and get on here. And so again, I'm opening up the show again. This is the welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I think on the invite, you got the thing we showed you from the Hard Rock Casino entrance there. It's really pretty cool to have our quote right there hardened in. Totally coincidental, by the way, just amazing. So it's really kind of a cool thing. All right. So first of all, let's go ahead. This is again the meeting of our Metropolitan EMS Medical Directors Alliance, aka the Eagles. And so again, this is recorded and it's out there for the public at large to see. So mind that business as we go through that, just so you know, anything you say here can be held against you in a court of law, right? So any event, so with that amendment and admonition, I think what we'll do is we'll move on. And by the way, we once again, I just have to put it down, is thank District 7 out of the San Antonio area, the fire service there for putting this on, their board, their chief, and of course, David and Julian, who have been just major in making sure this happened. And it's been very cool. And of course, this is all in honor of Craig Manifold, who has been, not just a mentor with me and a friend, but in some respects, a very much of a muse and really helped us direct. So I just want to make sure everybody still appreciates that. It never leaves my mind for a day. And so, hey, one thing I was going to say about the welcome back, my friends, of the show that never ends. I think I've got a photo up here. Let me see if I can find it. But this was, I think, let me see, share screen. Here we go. I'm going to do that. But what I was going to show you here was that's me and Keith Emerson a few years ago. I think this was taken in London, maybe around 2011 or something like that. And they had just done a great concert. And so it was kind of neat. And then the arm over my back is from Greg Lake. I'm not Greg Lake. I think that was Carl Palmer's arm. Yeah, in that picture. But I wanted to at least show you the person who came up with the welcome back, my friends, of the show. That was Keith Emerson. Unfortunately, we've lost him. But I am going to
Paul, who's who?
Okay, the one with the long hair is definitely not me. You remember, I'm like, I think I can't remember if I'm older than him or younger. I think we're about the same age, something like that. But that's his picture on my shirt there with his keyboards and all that. So we'll show you that sometime. But anyways, I just came across this yesterday because I got a hold of his wife and wanted to see if she actually will join us sometime, just so you know. I thought it'd be kind of fun to show you that. All right, let's move on. All righty, so let's go ahead and since Sandy, you got the tightest schedule, I think, according to everything I've seen here. If you don't mind, from the American College of Emergency Physicians, our Eagle extraordinaire, our sage and wise one, please come on up. Sandy, thank you.
I don't recognize that introduction, but thank you, Paul. Several things. Some of you probably saw that ACEP, along with our partners, and I won't go through all of the names, but it's the alphabet soup of emergency medicine, came out with a workforce study. Excuse me. Excuse me. Came out with a workforce study this past week. We had a summit on Friday, actually, of last week. There is projected, if we do nothing, if we continue to practice as we do, there will be a surplus of emergency physicians in the next 10 years. Again, the important piece of that is if we don't do anything. So there's lots of things we can do. One of the things I think was most important for this group to understand is that other specialties solve this by increasing the number of subspecialty and subspecialty positions. And you guys have already taken the first step in terms of getting EMS as a subspecialty. We hope that there will be other subspecialties of emergency medicine that will follow your footsteps, and that your role as a subspecialist in emergency medicine will be play a bigger role in the future. So anyhow, all of the groups are continuing to work on this, and we will have a game plan out in the next few days. Yes, Paul.
I was wondering if we can establish maybe fellowships like in plumbing, because they make a lot more money than us. So that would be a good thing, right? What do you think?
Well, someone suggested that they were going to get a job as a greeter at Walmart. But I think that this is a wonderful wake-up call. It's not a, oh my God, the sky is falling. There are no easy answers to this. There have been a lot of things posted on social media. We should file a suit and all of these things. But there are no easy answers to this, and there are no quick fixes to this. And so I think the issue here is the House of Emergency Medicine has to work on this together. And the more that we snipe at each other, the worse it's going to be. And so we're listening to everyone, every solution, but I will guarantee you that there are no, we've been giving this a lot of thought. There's not just one answer to this. It's a multi-pro. But I did want to mention that I think EMS is going to play a very, very important role in this going forward. And it's also going to play an important role in terms of being the model for how we do this.
Yeah.
Second thing, the reason I'm getting off is the CDC has heard us around the issues of N95 masks and the reuse of them. The surveys I think some of you took and the surveys that ACEP members took showed that despite the fact that the supply of N95s is actually pretty adequate out there, people are still using crisis standards. And so the CDC is going to, or has announced that it is raising those standards. And we're having a call in just a few minutes to talk about how that rolls out. So I'm glad to share those with you, but basically 5 times is the max that any device can be used, any N95 can be used. That's 5 donnings and doffings. That's not 5 days. And there are some other rules. I'll get those out to you, Paul, or to Jim, and they can give them to the Eagles. But that's the new crisis standard. So I think that's appropriate. The other things, the ketamine paper, the long-awaited ketamine paper is in final draft. And hopefully, I hope it will be out within the next 2 weeks. There's still a couple of places where the language needs to be tightened up and a little bit more proofing on that. I had hoped to announce today that we were going to start a vaccine in the ED program, where we were asking EDs to start vaccinating, consider starting a program to vaccinate discharged patients with J&J vaccine.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I had a call last night at about 8 o'clock from people at the CDC saying, please go ahead with this, launch it tomorrow, everything is fine. And then I woke up this morning to a notice from the CDC at 8 o'clock in the morning saying, by the way, J&J has been halted for the moment because of the potential for central venous sinus thrombosis in 6 women. So there will be no announcement. And when I contacted the people who contacted me, they said, oh yeah, we read that too. It's obviously breaking news. And so, but we will hopefully have some type of a program soon with toolkits and everything to do ED vaccinations. And finally, we have worked with MD Calc to create a point of care tool for the triage of of patients with COVID or suspected COVID, categorizing them into mild, moderate, severe categories using the pre-score and some other issues. That calculator will be hopefully out in the next week or two. It may be of some interest to you guys simply because you may want to look at destinations for those patients who fall into the very severe category. So that's my report, and I'm going to get off in just a few seconds, but I'll answer any questions.
Oh, anybody, do you have questions? Okay, hearing none, I will say is that we are going to, we are going to basically, be monitoring and discussing this later. We're going to actually, I got some infectious disease people coming on. We're on with the CDC this afternoon, and we're going to get more and more to this. We'll ask questions like, okay, if these are all young women, were they on birth control pills? Would this have happened? Is this greater than the usual? All that kind of stuff. So we'll try to get back to you later, Sandy, and fill you in what we're finding out from across the board, et cetera. So
Thanks.
great stuff and really interesting. And Ken's going to make some comments about that in just a few minutes as he gives his presentation. He's going to I'm going to give him a double roll, but I want to run around to a couple other folks, making sure that in case we lose them, I want to catch them while I can, like Peter Talak, like, Mick Malloy, et cetera. First, though, I do want to start with Scott Nichols. Are you still there? You want to join us, Scott, and I can do a quick introduction? You don't have to. If you rather stay off the line, that's fine.
Hey, Paul, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just doing double duty here. Go
Okay,
ahead.
good. Well, anyways, I'm just glad I always send Scott an invite here because I want him to keep up with what we're doing. Scott is like my boss globally, okay, when I'm out on tours for various groups, et cetera. And so Scott is the head of something called Sequel Tour Solutions. He has been in the business for decades, literally, and is the most trusted and the most sought after security lead for all these various entertainers. I can give you a whole list, I think, and most of you, I think, have actually met him at one time as we've gone through your cities and moved along. And so I just was going to have him say hi. And is there anything you need to know from us, Scott, or anything you could tell us about what's happening in the entertainment industry, for example?
No, just Michigan obviously is off the charts with the COVID cases. I don't know if there's some type of variants going on that they're not catching, but it seems like in general everybody's found basic protocols in the city. And some areas there's a lot of food and beverage, open air stuff. But yeah, the event world's starting slowly to crack open in more lenient regions. Obviously, Europe is a no-go for a while. I think overseas travel is not going to happen until 22, just because of the outbreaks that are happening and people still trying to get a grip on things. But nationally, I think we'll be doing a few things. Mexico looks like there's going to be a couple projects, but a lot of that's getting geared up for more planning purposes this year. But everything's coming out of the blocks in 22. So 22 is going to be a log jam of mass gathering events based on what's going to be allowed in each territory. So I think it's still a needle moving, if you will, that people are trying to make sure a lot of people get more shots in the arms before they really start doing some of these big events. But other than that, it's still slow.
Okay, good. Well, but thanks for just giving us a follow-up. But it's just great to see you, and I hope you learned from this thing. We're going to be getting into talking about the J&J thing here in a second, and some other issues of interest. For example, things that you and I have actually talked about in the past, and we're tightening some of that stuff up right now. And then a lot of people you've met before on the line. For example, you've met Mick Malloy, who's in Dublin. And Mick, you want to get on? You can say hi to Scott and give us a report from Ireland.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Scott. So cases are going down, but very slowly. We still have a kind of a resistance among the public to our lockdowns, which are happening right now. The one thing that seems to be going haywire is the whole vaccination program, because We've had to stop multiple times because of vaccination issues. And now the latest with the potential for clotting, rare clotting events meant 10% of our attendances in ED yesterday were people who think they have a reaction to the COVID vaccine. And so the AstraZeneca is now not allowed to be given below 60 years of age. Initially, it wasn't allowed to be given above 65 years of age. So we're backwards and forwards with our advice, and people are losing confidence in the national immunization advice about that. So it's having a significant effect on attendances in the emergency department. The other issue is a lot of our local GP practices, family care practices, are closing up shop to become an immunization center on a day, which means all of their patients are coming to the emergency department, which is really flooding our numbers.
Yeah.
So we're way beyond our normal numbers for pre-COVID.
Yeah. Hey, just as a little bit more of an introduction of you, Mick, because you're such a great participant, and you've been an expert on not only crowd medicine, as you guys call it over there, but you also, what's your relationship, and is it continuing as overseeing paramedic protocols across the nation? Are you still in that same role?
So I just got my letter of thank you for your service. You have done all you can. I served 8 years and I've now got out on good behavior. So I've partly left that role. I'm going to be staying with it about reforming some legal processes. That's the only involvement I'm going to have for the next period of time.
Okay, well, that's great to free you up, but he's just been a very influential person there, and it's just a person that we really treasure having on the line with us here today. So thank you so much then, and so on. And any way we can help you, you please let us know, okay?
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna jump over because we're so privileged to have Roberto Fumagalli on with us from Milano, okay? And Scott, you might have met Roberto before as well, but I think he helped to take care of Jake when we were over there. But anyways, Roberto, anything to report from Milano? So for us. Can you hear us, Roberto? He may be doing the same thing. Everybody else is going back and forth between calls. I think I see his videos on. Yeah. Hello. Buonasera, Roberto. Are you there? If not, we'll see if he can pop on later on. So let's jump over to, before I go to Fiona, if you don't mind, I'm going to maybe jump on with Peter Talak, because he's been unable to join us before. And all of you know Peter, he's been our representative for many years from the National Association of EMS Officials, and but he's been the medical director for the state of Utah for a long time. But Peter was way ahead of the game for many of us in terms of crisis standards of care, preparing for mass casualty, not mass casualty, but mass illness, et cetera, and various things, but also just been a terrific member of the Eagles for 2 decades. So Peter, just welcome back to the show that never ends, okay?
Hey, thanks. I'm in the ED, so
okay.
No specific agenda or comments, just generally Utah, we seem to be making incremental progress with vaccinations. I think we're probably between 75 and 80% of EMS providers in the state vaccinated now.
Good.
And it's pretty much everybody who is willing to be at this point. Our state has opened up to vaccines for anyone over the age of 16 to 18, depending on the shot. So it's going well. Our numbers dropped a whole bunch, like everyone's in a kind of plateaued at a lower level. So we're still fighting the battle here. I'm in our COVID ED right now, as a matter of fact. But thanks, everyone. I'm going to continue lurking, if that's okay.
Okay, no, that's fine, Peter. That's great. And we may have some bad news for you, too, as we get along, as we're moving through this. But you guys doing a great job out there. Hey, Eileen, Marty, speaking of which, you have to be on, I think, at noontime. You got a hit time, don't you, with NBC or one of the ABC affiliates or whatever? So is that right? Do you have a moment to talk, or should I just get you on later after your interviews? Eileen, are you there? Well, anyways, yeah, Dr. Eileen Marty, one of our infectious disease friends, are on, and hopefully she'll be able to join us later on, because I do have an interesting.
I won't be able to come back later on. I can talk to you briefly right now. So obviously the talk of the day is about the FDA and CDC statement regarding the Janssen J&J vaccine. it's a very small number of individuals. 6, I believe, was the total number, and those individuals did have thromboembolic situations, slightly different for each one. But you have to put it in light of the fact that there's been over 6.8 million people that have already been vaccinated with that vaccine without these manifestations. Although I will say that by going through the original application that Janssen did and presented to the FDA, there were more incidences of thromboembolic events among people who received the J&J vaccine compared to placebo, and significantly more, so that it was reported as an adverse event even before EUA for that vaccine. So what hadn't popped was it happening specifically in younger individuals, although there were a few younger individuals in that set that were initially reported. The biggest,
may I ask a quick question? Have they investigated whether it's a young woman on birth control pills, and this could have just been just what you see in the general population, that kind of thing? Do you know how much they've drilled down on that yet?
They haven't drilled down on it very far yet. Of course, they're looking at that. These are younger than when we see that problem from birth control, and nobody uses those levels of estrogen anymore that cause those problems in terms of birth control pill. So that's a key consideration that can be sort of put aside. And also, of course, this 2 studies came out in the New England Journal of Medicine showing how the AstraZeneca vaccine was inducing these antiplatelet related antibodies. And so there's a clear scientific link that may there may be some genetic factors involved. We don't know yet. And of course, they're doing the right thing to be safe and, with an abundance of caution in slowing this down. And I've got less than 1 minute.
Okay, got it. Well, later, maybe we'll talk more next week, but we are going to bring up, I'm going to do a search with the Eagles about what's happening out there if they're seeing breakthrough in the, and I just want to tell you about the one case we talked about yesterday. Kate, I'm not going to go into details for privacy reasons, so we're not trying to alarm people, but was that a Pfizer or Moderna that was used back in January?
So yeah, that was a fully vaccinated Pfizer family, if you will. The father was fully vaccinated, the mother, the aunt were partially vaccinated, and they're symptomatic with COVID-19. The father needing medical intervention. We just sent the sample off on Friday for to do sequencing to see if it's like the South African variant or something of that nature. So yeah.
I've been talking. You got to go. I'll tell them about the CDC and stuff like that. But thanks for doing as usual. Get back with us next week. I know next week will be better, right? So I'll see you.
Much better.
You're
Thank
the
you.
best. I'll see you. Good luck with your interview. Okay,
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Oh, you're the best. Okay, good. Yeah, she's got to be on right now. She has a 12 o'clock hit time with ABC, and then she goes on to the NBC affiliate here, I think, locally. All right. So anyways, what I was going to say is the follow up on that thing is that don't want anybody alarmed, because the sort of the answer from CDC I've had already over the weekend when I was talking to them was that, well, we did know that 1 in 20 might still get it. As far as I know, this person didn't, although being a little older, this person did not have any like drugs like steroids or methotrexate or anything like that. There was no immunocompromise that we are aware of. Although in the studies that Peter Antevy did, we did find out that the older you are, the less apt you are to generate the antibodies as well, et cetera. So this may be part of the issue as well. The person's a little older, but we're also going to look at the issue of neutralizing antibodies, and we're going to partner with the CDC on that. So more on that later. And I just want to move on to a couple other people before I go into Ken, who I'm going to have on here in just about a minute. I just want to hit a couple of other people real quickly that are on with us today. One of which being, of course, Fiona from the UK and NHS. What's going on there, Fiona? Anything we need to know about?
Thanks, and good afternoon, Paul, and everybody on the call. The stats from the UK at the moment are a total number of cases of 4.3 million and 127,000 deaths. In terms of vaccinations, we've now in England vaccinated 33.4 million, and that's 90% of the groups 1 to 9, which are the clinically extremely vulnerable and everybody over the age of 50. And this week we're starting to vaccinate the under 50s. 90% have had their first dose, and about 27 million have had their first dose, and 6.3 million have had their second dose. My understanding is that of the 33.4 million who've been vaccinated, just under 20 million have been given the AstraZeneca and about 14 million of Pfizer. We've just started using the Moderna in Wales and Scotland last week and starting to roll it out in England this week, but we've got very little experience of that. As you're aware, we stopped the AstraZeneca for the under 30s first dose. But there is a sort of risk-benefit conversation. So if you are a 27-year-old with cystic fibrosis, then the risk of dying from COVID is probably greater than the risk of dying from venous thromboembolism. We are advising people to have the second vaccine of whatever they had on the first vaccine. So if you had AZ on the first, you should have AZ on the second. There have been no reports of venous thrombosis or thrombocytopenia after a second dose of the AZ. What we have seen is certainly in my service, a significant number of people who have not tipped up for their second vaccine. So we're doing a lot of comms to try and get them back, but that doesn't seem to have been a particular issue nationally. Big concern that we've got is the increase, although it's still very small numbers, of the South African variant. So there's about 400 cases in the country, but there's been an outbreak in South London in 2 boroughs of 44 cases. So they're doing a really targeted PCR screen for that area. And we are starting to roll out the lateral flow device tests for the population. So you can now go to your local pharmacy and get a kit. Health Service, we've had that for some months, doing it twice a week. So I think that's my update, Paul.
Okay, good. And Peter Antebi has asked you if you could, they thought this was great information. You can share your policy if you're able to. That would be fantastic. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to switch over to Milano again. Buonasera, can you join us today for Roberto? I want to see if we can request a meeting.
Buonasera. Well, do you hear me? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So happy to hear news from you. And actually, in Italy, the situation is, let's say, at least in northern Italy, is basically improving. The number of patients admitted to the hospital is decreasing, and then the number of the ICU admission is decreasing too. We have still a tail in the number of patients admitted to the ICU, but the number of beds available are for sure increasing. Also, the intervention of the EMS is just returning to almost a normal situation, and this let's say that make us happy.
Okay, so listen. First of all, I remember when you had your first COVID case was announced on February 21st a year ago. And within a few days, you had an incredible number of people calling the 112 system, i.e. like our 911 system. And what percentage did that go up? It went up by thousands and thousands of calls, right? For the Worried Well. A lot of it was from Worried Well because they couldn't reach health department. They needed information, so people do call for us. And I think that you wrote an important paper about this. And I just want to let you I think that's a word to get out to everyone that, to set up mechanisms for that in the future and be prepared about the Worried Well, whether it's about radiation or a nuke or something, let alone COVID, right? Is that right? What happened in the first 2 days? What did you do?
We just try to reorganize the whole system. Let's say I'm talking about the metropolitan area. So the number of people responding to the call had been increased in order to have people dedicated to just keep quiet the people, and the other just dedicated to set up the medical intervention. In this way, we had been able just using some algorithms that we developed by time we succeeded in just dividing people who were really needing a medical intervention from the other one.
So what's important about this, the reason why I'm raising it, is that this came up with the Texas freeze, where the system was overwhelmed. The people who were out there who needed help, who didn't have the machines for their ventilator or their dialysis or whatever it was. And so what some of the doctors did is exactly what you did. It was your example. The people in the system went down to the dispatch area, and they actually created a whole new arena to sort of triage calls during that period of time. And we think that's a major plan going forward. And you were able to do it in a matter of days because you were prepared, you had planned for it. So I think everybody, we'll try to send a copy of your paper out to everyone here. And I think that was an amazing contribution. So it was good. And then I saw you have a publication last week, didn't you, about all the cardiac events that occurred, right? So
you know it very well.
Yeah. So I want you to know that several people in Europe and even internationally, Al Jazeera wants to do some interviews. So if you want, they were asking me for your name. Should I give them your contact information? Is that okay? So
okay, that's fine.
Okay, good. So anyways, because you guys were the first to notice this in Lombardy, where you saw that certain areas like Cremona or whatever versus, Mantua, there was just different, if you got hit hard by COVID, you had a lot of cardiac arrest. If you didn't get hit by COVID, so you were the first to actually tell us what we found in that paper. So congratulations again. Okay. So, all righty. Well, thank you, Roberto, for joining us. We always love seeing you, and you're the best. And you have so much experience. We're just envious. Okay. Unfortunately, for bad reasons, right? All right. But we want to learn from you. So thanks. All right. I'm going to turn over to Ken because he has to get off pretty soon. He has some really good stuff to relate to us. Before I do get Ken on, Ken, go ahead and go live. But I want to first say two things. One is I saw just so everybody's aware, I saw in the chat that Joel was asking about the STARS program in St. Louis. Scott Gilmore knows a lot about that because he's been putting it on. But what we can do is, since there's so much interest in that, is that maybe we can have both Scott and also have Trish Casey get on with us next week. Peter, if you could arrange that, because you gave a nice presentation today for us at the Seagulls meeting, as we call it, right? The Florida Eagles, right? And so does that sound like you can help us do that next week?
Absolutely. I'll get with her right now when we get it scheduled. Thank you.
Good. And then speaking of pediatrics, Andy, you've been, Andy Garrett, you've actually been always at the forefront of looking out for kids, and you're, affiliated with HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services. And but other than that, you're directly always interested in kids. So can you tell us, you put something in about some information you want to get to us? Can you tell us what that information is?
Sure, Paul. Folks over the past couple of weeks have done really nice briefings on the pediatrics, thinking about Peter and Joel's talks over the months. I was having an international conversation with some colleagues, and we decided to talk about pediatrics. And I thought this file that I downloaded was really useful. It's iteratively updated every week or so, and it really represents a huge lift in capturing all that state-based data to show, percent positive testing, about number of hospitalizations, number of ICU patients, et cetera. It's great for sort of validating what we see on the news, what we hear. There's a lot of talk about the variant and disproportionately impacting children, but it's important to remember that COVID, in terms of ICU space and emergency department visits, it's not insignificant, but it's relatively small, and it remains relatively small. And that's been the international experience as well, just from talking to some colleagues. So that's just the top line. It's a useful report, and I just wanted to share it around because I know this group's
okay.
In that.
So it's in the chat, and then maybe Jim, you could forward it out to our email list as well. Okay, all the stuff that we're doing, if you don't mind. Is that okay, Jim?
Yes. And I see Peter's got his hand raised.
Yeah, Peter. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, no, first of all, Andy, thanks for the PowerPoint. I looked at it. It looks great. It's a great resource. And I also wanted to mention that this month, I think it's probably about a week or so, I'm doing a webinar where we have we have actual footage from an MISC pediatric patient that we're going to be kind of going through in a case-wise demonstration. So it's really neat to see that. So just FYI, I'll send out that information shortly.
So thank you so much then. And Peter, if you don't mind, we're going to remind me later after I finish with Ken, because I got to get him on the road here. But let's talk about the issue of like maybe, hey, Jim, I'm running the Eagles meeting. You need something? Jim? Okay. All right, Jim Roach, that's interesting. So, all right. So I want to make sure it wasn't something urgent I needed to know about. So Peter, if you could just bring up the topic that we want to survey the Eagles maybe a little bit, even just now informally, to see if they're seeing anybody who's been vaccinated amongst our group and see if they've broken through like we had talked about a little bit with Eileen earlier. Okay, so let's take advantage of this now and move on. Ken, if you don't mind, oh, before I do that, Scott Gilmore. So is that okay for you? Can you be on next week and talk a little bit about the STARS program as well? Give your commentaries.
Yeah, I should be able to be on next week. Peter, I've already reached out to Trish, waiting for her to get back to me.
Okay, good. All right, is that okay with you? Would you like to do that? Because it looks like there's a lot of interest, and you've talked about this years ago, so it's great to have you see how much interest there is still here. So thanks a lot. Okay.
No
All right,
problem.
Ken. Let's go ahead, let's rock and roll with Ken. Ken, a couple things. One is you've given nice presentations to us before about the differences, obviously, how mRNA is made versus, how the J&J was done, et cetera. And just real quick about it, if you can give us a 1 minute thing of what's the differences between the vaccines. I think everybody's familiar with how a mRNA thing is manufactured. It's in a sense, and what it is very simple, right?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I actually use this in some of my vaccine hesitancy talks where I tell folks, would you rather be injected, because the fear of the new, so to speak, and I put it this way, would you rather be injected with a purely man-made molecule that has no disease in it whatsoever and can do one and only one thing, which is make a spike protein? Or do you want me to inject you with this virus, which can also make the spike protein, but comes along with all the rest of the stuff that comes along with the virus? AstraZeneca is an adenovirus from chimpanzees. Johnson & Johnson is a human adenovirus. The Sputnik vaccine from Russia is an adenovirus of two different subtypes of adenovirus. So whether these platelet activating antibodies that's causing this blood clotting stuff in AstraZeneca and presumably in Johnson & Johnson, maybe Sputnik, we'll have to see. Whether that's related to adenovirus or whether it's related to the spike protein, I guess we will have to wait and see what turns up. But yeah, it's completely different vaccine vectors. One is a adenovirus and one is purely just a messenger RNA thing.
And the other interesting thing is that it's a cerebral venous, thrombosis.
Yeah, it's a venocide, right? Cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, and it's women, young women. It happens in Europe. It's like 222 cases out of 34 million vaccinated. Generally within 14 days, generally under the age of 60, mostly women. So, yeah.
And in that specific location as well, which is kind of interesting in itself, meaning the, in the
for the 6 in the U.S. I just mentioned, yeah.
No, it's kind of interesting. All right, whatever. So let's get on with your talk. So one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is, when I've had family members who got COVID and I had to say, I got to quickly treat them with something, what works, what doesn't work. And there's been a lot of empiric stuff. There's a lot of, people throwing stuff out. And then there's a lot of people who would say, nah, I wouldn't use that, or there's no proof for that or whatever. But one of the ones that came up is ivermectin, which is a thing that we usually give to people for parasites, et cetera. So how's that work? And what's the story there? And is there evidence for that?
Yeah, so obviously it works great for worms because it affects their GABA receptors, but it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, so it doesn't affect our GABA receptors. So, but it's been long known that it has broad-spectrum antiviral activity. And in early 2020, we had an intriguing finding where someone did a cell culture and they found that ivermectin could actually block the SARS-CoV-2 replication as well. In fact, 92% reduction in viral load at 24 hours and 99.8% reduction in viral load at 48 hours. Now keep in mind, this is in a cell culture. This is not in an animal model or a human model, but that spawned dozens and dozens of worldwide studies on ivermectin that are still ongoing. Last count was over 70 studies, either ivermectin alone or in combination with a bunch of other stuff. And what came out, and we've been talking about ivermectin since late spring, early summer. I know we've mentioned this as a potential on the horizon for COVID. And some of the hospitals in Broward, I mentioned this months ago, were actually started using ivermectin, and they put together a study of their own. And they found that the mortality rate was statistically significantly lower in the ivermectin group. And what they did there was 200 micrograms per kilogram, single dose. The physicians were permitted to give a second dose once in 7 days, but the tiny minority of them got a second dose. This is non-randomized, though, non-blinded, and they sort of developed a propensity matched control. So while it's evidence, this is, again, not a randomized controlled double-blinded study here, but they did show statistical significance in the decrease, and this held in both the moderate and severe cases, and they defined severe as anybody over 50% FiO2 or worse with their respiratory requirements. So what about viral load? This is a study that Paul sent to me a couple of weeks ago. What about viral load and in a true double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized clinical trial? So this is one of the first ones that's actually, the top of the line study. And when you look at it, this was a 400 micrograms per kilogram once orally, but only 24 patients, 12 in the treatment arm and 12 in the control group. And there is a trend toward drop in viral load, no question about it, but it did not reach statistical significance either at day 4 or at day 7. Both. So there's the graph there, and you can see the ivermectin group to the left of each of these groupings, and the control outside of that. But in the same study, they looked at symptoms also. So if you look at any symptom, there looked like there was some benefit to the ivermectin group, but specifically the sense of smell issue. When you look at the sense of smell, that was actually highly statistically significant recovery in the group that got ivermectin. 76 days recovery of their sense of smell versus the placebo. So in favor of the ivermectin. They also looked at IgG levels, and they found another trend. This one also not statistically significant, 0.24 of lower IgG in the ivermectin group, which they suspect correlates to less severe disease, is what the authors thought about that. So what about prophylaxis? Can we use this thing to prevent disease? That's really where we're at. And just to step back a moment, antivirals are not antibiotics, right? So the value is early on. So when you look at these studies, what you want to do is prevent the virus from copying itself. Once you've allowed the virus to copy itself a couple billion times, there's not a whole lot of role of an antiviral. So there's no wonder that if you wait until really late, that you might not see as robust results. But how about prophylaxis? Really, really early on. So this is an interesting study of it's not been completely written up yet, but the results are there on clinicaltrials.gov, where they took household contacts of proven COVID cases, and before those household contacts had symptoms, they started them on ivermectin, 2 doses, one immediately and one in 72 hours. It roughly translates to 300 micrograms per kilo. I put the doses actually up on top of the graph because they had weight ranges, and they would do anywhere from 15 to 24 milligrams per dose. And they really saw a big decrease, 7.4% versus 59% in the control of who end up getting COVID symptoms after a household contact with COVID. Again, this is not super robust, and it's not completely written up and not peer reviewed yet, so we have to take this one with a grain of salt as well as the other ones. So what are the potential mechanisms of ivermectin? So downregulation of ACE2 receptors, which we know is the doorway into the cell. That's one proposed mechanism. Downregulation of pro-inflammatory cytokine genes, which we know cytokine storm has a lot of the morbidity, mortality associated with COVID-19. But this last one is really where I think this probably works. Inhibition of important alpha/beta-1 transport viral proteins across nucleus. And I know you guys love when I start talking biochemistry. Yeah. So I'm going to make this a little easier. Okay. So let's talk just, how does this potentially work? And this is if you want to look at a review article, this is a really good review article. It kind of talks about the theory behind ivermectin. And let's just look at all the things that has been shown to inhibit in cell culture. Now, again, cell culture, not animals or humans. Ivermectin can inhibit replication of HIV, dengue, Zika, West Nile, Venezuelan equine, chikungunya, pseudorabies virus, adenovirus, and SARS-CoV-2. So that's why I think that this last mechanism is probably where it works.
Yeah.
So this is a very simple thing I'll put on the side there. Actually, these are just three examples. So
I got to interrupt you again. Is that when people see this, what scares them the most about slides like this that you put up is that because you understand this stuff.
it's actually it looks complex, but it's quite simple. These are three examples, A, B, and C. It's not all just one slide. Okay. So these importance, your nucleus has basically it's the green zone, right? It's well secured area in the cell. And it's very highly regulated what can get in and out of the nucleus. And they go through these nuclear pores that are in the membrane. But in order to get there, you can't just go through it. You have to be escorted. So to get escorted, you have an important, that's importation, right? So these importance, alpha and betas, combined, and they attach to whatever it is that's trying to come in here. And this is usually a signal transducer and activators of transcription, or STAT for short. This gets attached to the important and goes through the port, and then it may cause your DNA to be upregulated to produce certain genes that might be antiviral, for example. Remember, our immune system has lots of branches to it. Obviously, antibodies, T cells, B cells, but also the cell has antiviral activity as well to fight off invaders. So you might, the cell cytoplasm might create some signals to say, hey, let's turn on a certain set of genes that can help us fight off this virus that's trying to replicate. Well, it turns out a lot of these viruses also have things that will attach to these importance. And if they are successful getting into the nucleus, they turn off those cellular protections against replication and are able to then have a much more robust replication in that cell. Ivermectin blocks specifically this important alpha. Now keep in mind there's lots of different importance. So while this would block your host as well as the viral proteins from getting into the nuclear membrane, there's lots of other ones that the host can use. And it looks like the viruses seem to be attaching to this one across the board. Like several of them seem to target the same alpha beta 1 complex. And if ivermectin blocks the ability for the viral protein to get into the nucleus, then the cell's ability to defend itself remains intact. And that is most likely the mechanism, what's going on with ivermectin and why it's such broad spectrum antiviral. So here's the conclusion. This is a well-known, well-tolerated, inexpensive, and highly available worldwide medication. It's a reasonable proposed mechanism of action and relatively strong in vitro evidence in the Petri dish, basically, as a general broad spectrum antiviral. But it is only weak evidence, specifically used against COVID-19. However, we do have dozens of studies that are in the queue that will finally give us an answer to this question. There is no question that there is positive signals from non-randomized studies. And the many studies that are out there are having a dosage range of anywhere from 150 micrograms per kilo to 400 micrograms per kilo, either as a one-time dose or up to 2 or 3 times over varying periods of time, anywhere from every 72 hours, one now, one a week from now. So it's kind of all over the map. So we cannot say this is proven, but we can say it's certainly interesting, something to follow, and it's got some reasonable basis in biochemistry that it should have some effect, or at least could have some effect.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, the interesting pharmacodynamics on that drug, it hangs around for a week, more or less?
Yeah, in fact, it looks like, specifically in the lung tissue, there's pharmacokinetics that suggest it could actually hang around for quite a long time, 30 days perhaps even.
Paul, I have a quick comment.
Well, hang on, but and in Ray's case, it will kill all his parasites as well, right?
So, Paul, can I make a quick comment?
Well, I just want to make sure Ray doesn't have a response to me. That's all.
Go ahead.
Hey, Paul, your comment bugs me.
Okay, got it. All right, Ray. Hey, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, no, so it's interesting that this has come up yesterday. I was talking to my sister-in-law who's from Guatemala, and she went to go visit her family. And she said that in Guatemala, there's essentially no COVID. And I said, well, how could that be? And then she started telling me that you can walk into a pharmacy and pick up the COVID kit. And I said, well, what's in the COVID kit? And she said, ivermectin. and antibiotics and steroids and all the other things. But anyway, ivermectin's in there as well. So this is great timing. Good stuff, Ken.
Hey,
Thank you.
Ken, could I ask a question? Last month, JAMA had an article, a randomized trial with a 5-day course of ivermectin, and they found no significant benefit. Can you comment on that? Because I'm excited about it too, but part of me thinks you ought to use new drugs as soon as possible before they either develop side effects or stop working. So I worry that,
and
I worry too many. Go ahead.
Hopefully I made it clear that I don't think this is proven yet. I think it's reasonable to study. And I think there's plausible biochemical reason why we could suspect that this may work. But I do think it's a pretty well tolerated medication and relatively safe, unlike the folks that were doing the hydroxychloroquine in the middle, because of the QTC prolongation. But this is not yet proven. There are countries, like Peter just mentioned, where they are using this for population prophylaxis. And, again, that's not randomized control, but there's some positive signals out of those studies as well. So we are seeing it outside of the purely randomized control trial standpoint, some positive signals. Whether or not that's going to hold up in the bigger studies, we'll see.
Thanks.
I think that my opinion is just like everything else. Is not that something works or doesn't work. I've said this 1,000 times about thousands of things, is that it depends on the right target, the right timing, etc. And so I think that will have to be I think a real interesting, thing. And then there may be some people that are helpful. This may be helpful for, whereas not it's broader, and you may dilute things. That's why you're seeing trends there is what I'm thinking, Ken, about the timing of when they gave it to people. So I think you're feeling that, again, earlier the intervention, the better results may actually be helpful here. So we'll have to look at, and I hope that they, in the broader studies, that they will, stratify accordingly. So
that's exactly. And Corey, I don't know specifically the study you mentioned, but if they didn't use it early on, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't work if you wait, because again, this thing prevents replication. Once you've allowed replication to occur, the disease is already well on its way. So I would imagine, just theoretically, any antiviral would be more effective early on in the disease course than later on, just because of the way they work.
Okay. Hey, Mike Kaufman had to get off, but he has a little chat for everybody about the new policy statement coming out. I may ask him to talk about it next week, just in case he's still there. Are you still there by any chance, Mike? Or are you gone?
Hey, Paul, I'm going to have to run. Okay. It's good seeing everybody.
I know you do, Ken, but that was fantastic presentation as usual. And again, we're in awe. And so thank you so much as usual for everything you're doing. Give my best to Steve McCoy. Okay. So
yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm going to say. All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Peter, let's bring up that issue that I wanted to bring up before, is that we wanted to I want to just informally poll the Eagles right now, but I think moving forward, I want you guys to be paying attention and screening amongst your group if you're getting people who've been vaccinated, and see if they do get COVID after the fact. And we've seen some cases down here in South Florida, so we don't know if we're going to be the canary in the coal mine, or it's like nothing new, because we knew that 1 in 20 might still get it. But what you heard from Eileen Marty before is that that the person was pretty sick and they had gotten their dose, some time ago. But does it wear off because that was 3 months ago? Is it just a specific person who just apparently for whatever reason that day got sick, whatever it may be? And so I think that's something to monitor as well. And then John Jew, I'm going to be turning to you in just a second on a couple of things. One is reaction to Ken, and then also this thing I'm bringing up now. So has anybody seen any of their personnel with a breakthrough by any chance, since we vaccinated so many of the MS personnel? Anybody that they know of?
Yeah, so Paul, I guess I can go first. We've had two now, at least that I know of. One who had just completed her dosing regimen, and now we have one that is months after the 2 Pfizer doses, and had a known exposure, and lost smell and taste, and that's how we determined that she got sick. As you know, we have been doing a lot of antibody testing. Unfortunately, we don't have on her any knowledge of what her antibodies were looking like. anecdotally at our vaccine site, where we've done over 45,000 vaccines now, we've tested a number of people who have no antibody response, at least on the lateral flow tests. And so I'm curious, is this truly a breakthrough, right? That this version of the virus kind of broke through and escaped the vaccination? I'd love to hear John's thought on that. Or is there some other etiology here happening, and what does this really mean moving forward? So I'll be curious to hear what other people have to say.
Well, before we move on to other people, I just want to say I have been in contact with CDC folks. They are seeing it in other places around the country, and they haven't quite, they thought maybe it's a hospital thing, or maybe it was just, maybe the thing wasn't stored right in certain places or certain times, or the person, so they're going to be doing a lot of investigative things. See, is it just, is it just the vaccine didn't work in these people, or is it something else, like, how it was given, or, or if how it was stored, and all those kinds of things that we will have to look into before we jump to conclusions. But I just want everybody to have their eyes wide open. And number two, it tells me that this might be related to variants. We're looking into it, as Dr. Marty said earlier. And if so, we better continue to protect ourselves and our crews, and presume that you're not fully protected. You may be better protected, but you're not fully protected. So I think that's how I'm feeling right now. But Peter, you and I are going to be doing some studies, hopefully with CDC. We'll see how that goes. All right. Anybody else hearing of cases where they've had breakthroughs where they are, meaning vaccine breakthroughs and people getting the disease? Well, that's a good first sign if that's the case of not hearing from anybody. Let's move over to John. You want to react to that, first of all, John, and then secondly, talk about Ken. We'll talk about Ken's thing first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so like my quick 1 minute comment. Ken's really was so eye-opening. Again, I get vertigo when I look at his slides again as well. But the issue here was the following, that I've been following, like Corey, the randomized double-blinded control studies. There's actually 3 comments. Number 1, that the pharmacokinetics in vitro are definitely there. Number 2, some of that is the concentration in the current available human model in both the tissue as well as the serum. So it may be a concentration issue. And number 3, the timing issue, as Ken suggested, it needs to be done early. But to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been a well-designed, double-blinded, randomized control study using ivermectin in either early treatment or prophylaxis right now. So the jury's still out. That's my first comment on ivermectin. We don't really know.
Yeah.
The second comment on is on the breakthrough. There is a preprint that came out yesterday or day before yesterday from Israel. As you know, Israel has really got most of the population vaccinated, and they looked at breakthrough in their primarily Pfizer vaccine. It turns out that the breakthrough does occur. As everybody knows, the vaccine is not 100%. In fact, it's close to 90% on real world data, but there is a significant odds ratio higher with breakthrough of the variants, specifically the 1351. So this is the first real world study that basically shows that there is breakthrough in a higher proportion against the Pfizer vaccine compared to a normal control. The other one, and
John,
this is the, yeah.
And then tell us again colloquially, what's the 1351?
Yeah, that's the South African variant, and the P1 and the P2 are very similar to the 1351. It has a mutation called the E484K mutation. That's of the 17 and 21 mutations. So again, the South African variant and the Brazil P1 and P2 variant are the ones that we need to worry about. And it is in the Israel study, there's a markedly higher, the odds ratio is 10 times higher that they got infected with the 351 variant versus the control population. The second thing in the Israeli study, I hate to hog the comments, is the following, that the Israeli study documented that the second, they actually studied the breakthrough between the first dose and the second dose, and it was markedly, as everybody expected, that you needed the second dose to prevent increasing breakthroughs here as well. Again, this was the Pfizer vaccine as well. So there is data. I understand Fiona's and the Europeans on 1 shot versus 2 shot, but there is data suggesting greater efficacy with 2 shots with the Pfizer vaccine.
Okay, great, thanks. So one of the things I was going to train off on that a little bit is that I think again that we better be careful and not think that once we're vaccinated that we're immortal and all that. I think that still keeps us going. Libby Char, you're a state health director as well, and as being one of our Eagles forever. And tell us a little bit about what have you heard anything about this, and do you have any other things to tell us about from Hawaii?
Good morning, Paul. So we have had a few cases of breakthrough. The cases that we've seen, it's just been a handful, and it's mostly been in healthcare workers, which I think just makes sense because that's who got vaccinated already, in the population. We had somebody who was about a month out. We had somebody else who had been vaccinated back in December. One of them was completely asymptomatic, and it was because of a pre-travel test that it was picked up. Somebody else had mild symptoms, and so that's how their case was picked up. But thankfully, they've been minor. I think I just heard recently that we had one case that ended up hospitalized from breakthrough COVID.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts is that, again, this may be an inoculum related, and the new variants that may be more contagious, number one. And so I mean, there's all sorts of reasons, but obviously one size does not fit all. And we'll have to just see how this all pans out. So, okay. And then you don't know how much all of us, and me included, are getting a little bit more cavalier now that we're, vaccinated, et cetera, but maybe we got to keep our guard up, more than ever before. So under these circumstances. Okay. Any other statements, questions, or comments on all this from anybody? Okay. And John, anything else new to report from the world of infectious diseases or Portland?
Not that of interest right now.
Okay, got it. And then let me say this. I want to, first of all, recognize that Laura Hall is back on with us today. And most of you know Laura from our previous Eagles meetings in person. And Laura, it's always great to see you and hope you're doing well, et cetera, right? So if we do get together, you're still trying to see, it's a possibility that you may come visit us in person as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. But it may be towards the end of the meeting because you got some other stuff going on personally in the beginning of the week, correct? If I remember correctly.
Well, my goal is to get there on Tuesday or on Wednesday.
Oh, good.
So we'll have to just play it by ear.
Okay, good. Let me see if anybody else. First of all, let me tell you the CME number. I hope we lost a lot of people. I don't want to lose the CME, but today's CME number, from what I understand, is 129.62, 129.62. And I guess I'll try to write that into the chat. And then the second thing is that for those around as I call them, the Seagulls meeting earlier on with Florida, you're 129.63, 129.63 for that one. Okay. So 62 and 63, 129s. All right. Well, listen, I'll try to say, can someone else write that in the chat for me, if you don't mind, that this current one is 129.62. All right. Let's see. I guess what we'll do is we'll do a walk around the room and see if there's anything going on. Well, New York is always a canary in the coal mine. Is there anything to report from there, John? I mean, sorry, Glenn, rather.
Hey, everybody. Hope all's well. We've actually had two of my deputy doctors actually test positive after being fully vaccinated with Pfizer. They just tested positive over the weekend, most likely from their clinical shifts at the hospital. That seems to be the exposure. Both Pfizer. Fire department has only been administering Moderna to our personnel. We're probably right about 50% of our members now. We have uniformed members, fire and EMS side, about 7,500 who have received the vaccination now, just drips and drabs. We have been doing retired World Trade Center members. We've now done family members of, fire department personnel. We've administered so far about 88,000 doses of vaccinations. But we keep plugging along, and we keep checking our city numbers, positivity rates, and state numbers, and we still unfortunately are in the top 5 state positivity as reported the other day.
Okay. Hey, John, just so you know, I've had some various media contacts, including people from overseas, and they wanted to know, they were asking if I could get, they wanted the contact information for some of us. You were one of the people they named. And do you have any problem with me giving them at least your email?
Not at all.
Okay, got it. And the same thing with you, Glenn. How about you? They were asking for people that had sort of boots on the ground experience. Does that sound okay as well?
Sure, that sounds fine.
Okay, good. So I'll make sure that I do that, et cetera. They were contacting me this morning. I'm going to be doing lots of media interviews myself, but I'd like to sort of spread this around if I may, that kind of thing. And I want you guys, especially, and Roberto, you said that would be okay as well, if I remember. So I'll send them your email as well. So if you don't mind, they have. I mean, it's not just like the usual media, but they're also even having Al Jazeera is very interested in this. So just to give you an example of how we've had sort of an international impact out there. And that's why I really want you to keep the boots on the ground. It sounds like it sounds like Glenn has the same kind of issue that we had, but in a certain arena. So that's kind of interesting. So we'll try to track this a little bit more, and we'll be talking to CDC about this today. So, all right, let's move around. Anybody else have any comments? Ray, can you tell us a little bit about Dallas, Texas? Okay.
We have in Dallas the additional excitement of managing the Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center now with a little over 2,000 of our close friends from south of the border, teenagers we have there. So that's a little bit of additional excitement. We're awaiting the decision of what's going to happen with the J&J vaccine, of course. We're monitoring our regional hospitalization numbers very closely, and there absolutely is a stability across our region of about 500 to 550 new admissions for COVID to hospital every day. Seems to be pretty flat, pretty stable. Pediatrics, interestingly, maintain about 1.5% of all inpatients in pediatric hospitals are COVID. So we're standing by, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Hey, thank you so much for all your help too on this, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for always taking the abuse from us, that kind of thing, right?
You got 1 more second, 2 more seconds.
Absolutely.
Thanks everybody who responded to the control crike letter that I sent out. Almost 30 of you responded in less than a day. It looks like there's only one entity across the country that's using the control crike device, which is, I think, from Pulmodine. So we're just really looking into the issue of what device seems to be best for field cricothyrotomy. I'll conclude by saying that most of you are using a scalpel and an intratracheal tube.
Is that right? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I got one around here right now. So, all right, well, listen, and just for those of you maybe newcomers to this whole thing, is that Ray Fowler is officially the first Eagle, and it was just really great because when I first decided to have this meeting, he was the first person to happen to call me and say, hey, can you come join this meeting? And he was already going to be in town in Pittsburgh. And of course, that was even better when he came to work with me later on. So it was really cool. So
yeah, Paul, when he told me I was going to be the first Eagle, wanted to call me Claude. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. As usual, I know I can count on you for some bad pun. That was really good. Thank you. All right, so it looks, speaking of old timers, right? There's Terry Valenzuela. Hey, Terry, did you rest up for this afternoon's nap?
Yeah. In March, Governor Ducey proclaimed that that there needed to be no mandates anymore, that we are ready for business. And went to my local supermarket yesterday, and the seniors are wearing a lot fewer masks, and the employees, one struck me in particular, had a face shield halfway pulled up. And so I asked a few people, and the responses were, the governor says we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I got one, Jesus is my protection. So I'm not as optimistic.
Yeah, well, and especially with what we're hearing now, and it just keeps the thing floating around, and it has more chances for variants to produce. So just awful. And so, but thanks, but it's really great to see you, and thanks for continuing to join us. Josh was on earlier today. I don't see him now. Should have got a report, but overall, I think you gave us the quick assessment for what's going on there in the supermarket. So that tells us a little bit right there.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, Ray.
I've been checking the pharmacy prices on ivermectin just for jollies while we've been on.
Yes,
the best price was CVS for $16.92 with a good RX coupon for 8 pills.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. That's good to know.
Awesome.
So, That's CVS, right? Okay, thanks, Ray. All right, good. And remember, what I do is I throw in baby aspirin. So I usually give them about, if they're 80 milligrams times 5, take 5 of them, a couple times a day, et cetera. So, because that's the biggest issue as far as I'm concerned. All right, well, let's see. Let's just move around the country if we don't mind. Emily, we should talk to you, working there in New Orleans government. And it's really cool to have you on board. So I think it's okay. Peter, by the way, just said that that in Guatemala, it's 15 cents per thing, right? That's great. So let's go move down there, right? Because it's better pricing. Hey, go ahead, Emily, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in New Orleans?
Sure. We're actually relatively stable in New Orleans. Our numbers are lower than some of the big cities, which is exciting. I think a lot of our residents are really still laying low, and we're just kind of tracking a lot of the tourism effects right now. We do have some of the variants, but again, those are not as great as some other places that are in the news right now. We have had a couple of exciting efforts to promote vaccines in true New Orleans fashion. So some of our local bars are giving out shots while you get your vaccine. So that was a pretty exciting thing over the last couple weeks. That's definitely how it is down here. And then just like everybody else with the J&J being placed on hold, that's something that we're worried about, not only the access, but just the hesitancy that's going to follow it. But otherwise, pretty stable.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Over there on Esplanade, there's that burger place I always go to.
Oh yeah, Portugal.
Portugal, yeah. And then what's their thing called? The Monsoon, or what's their drink there?
Specifically at Portugal, it's not the Hurricane?
No, it's not Hurricane. They use another one over there. I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm going to have to go there to find out.
I think it's Monsoon, it's something like that. They just had a different name, I'll have to look it up, that kind of thing. So,
I'll have one for you and report back.
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you to do. So I'm going to, every week, I think I should ask someone in their different cities. So in case we go there, they tell us about our favorite haunts that the local people know that most of the tourists don't know about. We have talked about Irene's already with, Megan. So your report is going to be on Portugal, right?
Absolutely. I consider that my duty.
Yeah. Good. All right. Fantastic. Then I think that's great. A shot of Pfizer and a shot of of a Monsoon. That sounds great. So I've actually taken a lot of the Eagles there, and everybody loves it. It's a great place, etc. Yeah. All right, let's move on. One thing I do want to tell you all about is that I just got a text from Tom D. Bernardo. We call him Devo. Tom has been one of our fire chiefs here in Broward County in the past, and now runs our whole statewide program for implementing, the CARES cardiac registry across the state, et cetera. And he's just a fantastic person, really, really interesting person and really smart. And then he sent me a text, and he says that, let's see, he's broadcasting on a 65-inch TV because my 90-year-old mother wants to watch. Okay, so he actually sent me text pictures of, and it shows our screen where we're all on there. So it was pretty cool. So I just want you to know that we have a larger audience than you think, and that's coming through the Seagulls thing that Peter sets up and all that. Peter, can you tell him real quickly about that? You basically patch the Seagulls in, right? And whoever else is on that. And there's a lot of people on that, correct?
Yeah, no, we kind of we are indeed your idea of getting people together, and because we were kind of lonely. And it turns out that now 11 to 11:30 Eastern time, we do a 30-minute, it's evidence-based. Next week, we have some folks from the Nashville Life Flight who are going to be talking to us about phanerothoracoscopy, or actually that's the week after that. We've had people talking to us about detecting large vessel occlusion using devices, STARS today with Trish Casey. And so if anyone's out there who knows a researcher who has a paper that it kind of feels like after you publish that no one's read it, please have them contact me. We'd be happy to have them come and give a 15-minute presentation to our group that's related to what we do in the field. So that's it.
Let me ask you this: how many people are on that call? And so therefore, how many are you patching in here at 11 Eastern? Huh?
Yeah, we've had as many as 40, and these are medical directors and EMS leadership from around the state. And it's just a great way to get everyone together. So there's anywhere between 30 to 40 people who patch in via my one little box here. So
And what you're doing is that they're on a Teams, right? The Teams thing. So it's an alternate pathway. Then you can basically patch them in through your computer, et cetera. And the reason why I bring that up is several other people are doing the same thing with their groups or their fellows. So just a way of doing that. Like, for example, seeing that Peter Talak was on there before, Scott Youngquist has been doing that, and various other people. So just a thought, if you want to have, open this up to other folks. So that's why when I saw the thing with Devo, that even his moms will watch it, it's great. So it's very cool. All right, let's see. We only have about 7 or 8 minutes left, so we'll just do some bullet rounds here. And Dr. McDaniel, I haven't really picked on you before, but Dr. McDaniel has District 7, and I just want to say, in your world, is there anything, since you're out in the suburbs, so to speak, anything that you could report to us as a representative of one of those areas in deep in the heart of Texas, as they say, right?
Right. Nothing really new to report that hasn't already been reported. Unfortunately, I kind of fell on my sword yesterday with some hardcore anti-vaxxers in the fire department and convinced them to go ahead and get their Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which we were giving at the fire station. And then this report came out today. So my phone's been blowing up ever since.
Yes. How many of them are young women? That's the one thing you say, is maybe you would exclude that for now or whatever.
Right. Exactly. So we're also looking at the same program of getting some of our shut-ins vaccinated as well. So the governor, I think, wants a pilot program for us to go out and kind of do the shut-ins. We're still trying to work on that, all the details for that kind of thing. But we're seeing the same thing as San Antonio is seeing. We're seeing a lull in the amount of patients that we're admitting. We're not admitting as many patients that have been vaccinated, but we are still seeing quite a few that have not been vaccinated. And actually, my son just recently called me and told me that he has COVID. And part of the reason was we were just having a hard time trying to get a vaccine, trying to get him to a place where there was a vaccine. So about the day he was supposed to go in, they tested him with the rapid, and he was positive. So he's at home convalescing at this point. Okay. So nothing really new or important to report that hasn't been reported already.
Okay, got it. Well, let me jump up to RJ in St. Paul real quickly, because we haven't talked to you for a while. You've been on faithfully, but I just thought I'd sort of hear from you, because you're always like, you got so much under control. Always, you're the best up there, RJ. So what's going on? Anything else we should hear about, or not necessarily?
Well, speaking of hurricanes, we were getting a perfect storm up here.
Yeah.
We've got the COVID numbers going up. Our hospitalization numbers are up. Our units are full. We've had to suspend our mobile ECMO program. In addition to that, we're all on edge over what's going on with the demonstrations. Our SWAT team medics are spread to the hilt. Yeah, we're in for some real hot times here this summer, I think, with the Chauvin trial. And then the other 3 are going to be tried in August. We're going to have some real exciting times.
Yeah, I know. So anyways, we're all with you and thinking of you. I'm just sorry that all of a sudden the COVID surging there, that's kind of worrisome to me. And I'm, because you guys are always doing a pretty good job up there, I think, at St. Paul, Minneapolis, et cetera. And hey, just so for everybody else that's on the phone, so they know that about RJ. RJ, how many years have you been on the job there as the medical director for St. Paul Fire in the city of St. Paul? How many years?
About 34 now. But I like the way you put it, 9 fire chiefs.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, that's right. We had that. What was it like? They used to have this 5-timers club on Saturday Night Live, as you get to be the hosts at 5 times, and you enter this new thing. So we decided to outdo it and have the 6-timers club for how many fire chiefs you outlived. And so AJ's up to 9 of them, which is great. So anyways, congratulations to you as well for being there, and you've done such a great job, and that's why you're the perfect person for that position. So good luck with you and all that. John Jew, how long have you been doing this now, particularly in Portland, for example?
I think I lost count, about 34. Actually, RJ is 1 year ahead of me as well, I think.
You're at 33 years. That's it.
So, like Corey, I've lost count of fire chiefs. It's over 10, I think.
Yeah. So it's
By the way, I shouldn't complain about demonstrations in front of John.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So at least, yeah. So anyways, a third of a century. That's amazing, guys. So good for you. Let's see if I can bounce in to see there's a couple other people here. Crawford, anything to report from Philly beyond what we said before?
Not really. I was going to say we were doing a good job with vaccinations until we shut down our clinics today because of the J&J issue. But like pushing 1 million, I think.
Hey, Crawford, so if I came and did ride-alongs in your city like I often used to do in the past, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Where would you take me for dinner in the middle of the night or for a treat or a snack or whatever else, right? Just like if I go to Detroit, I go to Dutch Girl Donuts, right? How about you? What would we do? Where would you take me?
I think we've been through this before. I don't go out and I
Yeah.
don't live in this city. So, and I have no life. So I have no clue.
That's right.
If you ever come, I'll try to find someone to like take good care of you.
Yeah, so the two big places that are right near each other for the Philly cheesesteaks, or what is it, Pat's and Gino's? What were the names?
Yeah, I mean, there are others, but yes, Pat's and Gino's.
Yeah, that's the competing. There's that sort of center where the cars are just trying to go. The traffic is held up in the middle of
It's
the
like
night.
the Liberty Bell. I think I've seen them once in my life.
That's great. All right. Well, thanks a lot. We just make sure. Hey, AJ, let me actually talk to you, if you don't mind, beyond your son. Anything else going in the world that we should be aware of or something to think about? Are you there by any chance, AJ, still? Maybe not. And if not, let's then.
No, I'm good, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, you're all set. You're saying nothing to report. Okay. Ben Weston in Milwaukee. Anything you could roll by us?
Yeah. Hey, Paul. Just mild increase in cases, kind of surrounded by states with much greater increases in cases. So keeping a close eye on that. And then, of course, Johnson & Johnson. We've been trying to shift that to our kind of at-risk, vulnerable populations, incarcerated populations, homeless, shelter. So running into some challenges, obviously, there, much as everybody is. Thanks.
Okay, got it. All right, and then I guess I got remainers in here are Joe Holly. Anything say out of Memphis?
No, nothing dramatic. We've got most of our EMS services are in the vaccination business now, including our EMT and paramedic training programs as well. So we're seem to be doing quite well in that regard, and our numbers are fairly steady at the moment.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks. Jeff, Austin, Texas.
Nothing really going on here. Pretty much same as last week. We said everything's kind of trending back to normal. One of the things I did do is I've asked our EMS and fire folks to kind of start tracking any breakthrough post-vaccination positive tests so we can start.
I guess what I'll do is I think Jim Augustine must have had to get off here. I don't see him here. I was going to be going to him, but I will talk to Jim and maybe Mark Worth out there at Colorado Springs, and then maybe get a survey out and at least tell people, are you seeing this? And then let us know, and just a message, let us know if you start seeing it, because I want to track this. It's a little bit of a worrisome thing, but I mean, it may not be that big a deal, it's just that we're going to see cases like that. But on the other hand, I'd like to track this because we've always had our nose on the, the head of the game, as we've done with on the cardiac arrest thing. So I'd like to see the same thing happen. All right. Does anybody else have anything else they want to pipe in about, they forgot about, they want to add to it now before I get off? If not, I think it's all time to say welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends next Tuesday. We got the topics already set up, and I think we should formally say buonanotte to Roberto Fumagalli for joining us once again. Okay, and so buonanotte, Roberto, and we'll see you later. Mick, thanks again as usual for joining us, and Scott, thanks.
Well, I'd be very impressed if you did that one in Irish now.
Okay, yeah, I got to learn that, don't I? That kind of thing. So now that I'm an Irish citizen and got my Irish passport, that kind of thing. Thanks to you. Thank you for alerting me to that. It was really fantastic.
Iha wa.
What is it?
Iha wa. Good night.
Iha wa. Okay, I can remember. Iha wa. Right? Okay.
Iha wa.
Wow. Okay, got it. I will try to remember that in the future then, at the very least. So good evening to you, sir. Thanks again for everything you do, all of you on this call. So we'll see you later. Signing off. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.